And joining me here I have on the line on Zoom, which I've never actually used before, but I have here with me a very special guest, a man who has many titles: boxing judge, broadcaster, analyst, show creator, pilot, literally everything you can think of. Basically a modern day Renaissance man. Fernando Barbosa from ESPN Knockout and ESPN Deportes. Some of you who have seen some of these top ranked shows on ESPN Deportes, you may recognize this man. Fernando, how are you doing?
Doing great. Happy Sunday afternoon. Thank you for the invitation. And it's always happy, and it's a pleasure talking about boxing, just about anything. One of my big hobbies in life. So, yeah, and I know you're a big fan of boxing, and I know you write a lot, and I'm thrilled to be with you right now.
Yeah, I mean, I really do appreciate it, especially as we kind of mentioned, talked about it a couple of minutes ago, especially a day after, not even 12 hours after we had, 24 hours really, after we had a somewhat short top rank on ESPN card headlined by WBC 130-pound champ Miguel Alacrán Berchelt, just absolutely, dominating his win against Elian Valenzuela in 6 rounds. It was certainly a very interesting card in more ways than one, because obviously we had a great fighter like Berchelt, but also the very first fight on the card. It was certainly interesting, where we didn't just have the traditional 3-judge setup. We had 6. I believe this was a WBC decision to do, where you had 3 judges scoring from the TV Azteca studios in Mexico City, and then you had 3 judges scoring the fight in a remote location, I believe either from home or from a undisclosed location, if I remember correctly, watching it on a TV monitor. So instead of the traditional 3, we got 6 total scorecards, which was a little overwhelming to try to write and tweet, because I was waiting to see, are they going to include all 3 judges, or are they going to include all 6? But Fernando, as a judge, kind of want to get your thoughts on this setup, on the 3 judges from home, 3 judges at the actual venue, all kind of from different vantage points, because it is certainly an interesting thing to sort of have to witness and sort of really experiment, because it's something that's not really done often, or if at all, really.
Yes, definitely. I just to correct you a little bit, there were 6 judges judging the fights remotely, 6 of them.
Okay.
There were the 3 that were judging in the studio. They were in the studio close to the ring, but they were remotely judging. They were not around the ring. So there were 6 judges, six judges judging the fights remotely. This is due to COVID. We were forced to in the WBC. We were forced to create this program led by Mauricio Sulaiman. And there is a really nice technology nowadays that's been tested throughout the last 2 years, and it was put into effect now with this remote judging. My personal view on that is that I take a positive. My take is a positive one. I think it benefits boxing in many ways. One, you have more judges, therefore the margin of error in the decisions is much better. The more, the better. Second of all, the views and the angles are much better on TV than being next to the ring, where sometimes the ropes cover your view.
Absolutely.
And you have better angles. In fact, I've always said that the best location for a boxing judge should be a tennis chair or tennis chairs on top of the rings, because you will have better eye view. Also, another big positive is the cost of judges. Okay, promoters pay the judges. Okay. And by doing remotely, I think that it decreases the paid. And nowadays in COVID, that all the budgets are down from boxing, from boxers. from boxers' purses to just about everything in the food chain is lower. So remote judging makes it uh, a very nice thing. Within makes promoters have better budgets for it. And then the negative, there's a negative in it, is that by not being next to the ring, sometimes you don't gauge the intensity of the punches. You know, when you're next to the ring, you know how hard a punch was landed. When you're away, you don't gauge that with that exact whatchamacallit feeling.
Right.
So that's my take. It's more positive than negative. I'm all for it, particularly because it reduces the margin of error. You know, 6 or 5 better than 3 for sure. Interesting experiment, and it was the first time that is done in the history of boxing. And it started on the last card in Mexico City. But all the fights they were either a technical knockout or they didn't go to the card. So it was really on this card that it was the first time that the announcer read in one of the matches. Which one was that?
It was Omar Aguilar, Dante Aldon, if I remember correctly.
No, it was the first one. It was Ray Picasso.
Yeah,
versus
Ray Picasso. I'm sorry, I'm reading this wrong. I was reading my thing wrong. Yeah, you're right. Ray Picasso, which by the way was a very, very good fight, especially the first few rounds. I thought that was a lot of great action there. I thought Picasso looked good for the most part for being how young he is, and I do agree. It's a very interesting way. It's a setup. One thing that I was a little bit surprised was that when they added the extra judges, I'm surprised they went with 6 and not 5, because I thought, me personally, and you can, and maybe you can convince me otherwise, but I think with 5 being if you're going to do more than 3, I think 5 is a better number than 6, because you have the possibility of stuff being like maybe you get 4 judges going a majority of this on the same card, or you have like a 3-3 split. Like you're still going to be dealing with more risk of it being a draw. And I think
if you're going to go 6, go 7, right?
Yeah, or 7. Listen, I mean, I'm all for odd number judges, 3, 5, 7. I think I prefer that a little bit more. And it is funny that you mentioned the whole the tennis court view for because I was talking to a couple of years ago to Joe Cortez, who was talking to me, and he mentioned the exact same thing on what he thinks judging should be done. Instead of doing ringside, it was certainly do it from an elevated point of view where you have fights either at eye level or just below eye level. And I fully agree with you on the TV monitors, because I think it does bring better angles. I think I personally feel like better equipped to judge fights if I'm watching it at home on a TV instead of me being at ringside covering an event. I do think I feel a little bit better covering from home. But the one thing about the judging, not talking about the last night's card, but throughout the month, there were a couple of questionable scorecards, a few of them that I think the 2 biggest culprits, or at least just judging by social media, is Tim Cheatham and Dave Moretti. And I remember this was maybe Cheatham, I believe he had one fight, Antonio De Marco versus Giovanni Santillán, which his final score was fine. It was like 96-94. I didn't really, that wasn't the issue, but it was the issue like when you analyze the actual scorecards, it was almost completely flipped from what the other two and what almost everyone thought. It was almost like Tim Cheatham was scoring the fight as if Santillán was De Marco and De Marco was Santillán. And just going to get your thoughts on someone who does this for a living and also has a lot of years of experience judging fights. Where do you kind of stand on how the judging has been for these top-ranked shows this month?
No, I mean, well, I don't do this for a living. It's purely my hobby. Boxing has been my it's a hobby of mine since I was a kid, and I became a judge because how many times we heard about robberies
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So I became a judge just to make sure that at least my card will never get corrupted. In the times that I've been judging, I've never seen any corruption as such. Definitely nothing offered to me yet. Uh, so it's been a clean ride on that end. And I have to say, Carlos, uh, judges, we get exposed every week. Uh, particularly somebody like me that in many oftentimes I'm not an official judge. I'm an unofficial judge, but I'm exposed. You
Right.
know, putting my card on screen on ESPN, exposing myself, and we do have bad nights. Uh, there's a judge is a human, just like anybody, and put it this way, I've seen so many cases where all the media members, they love to score, and they love to tell the scoring, and I've seen some really bad scores on the media, but nobody says anything to them, right? Uh, one of the interesting things that I would love to do, an experiment that I would love to do at one point, is to have like like a few top members of the media scoring official fights,
Okay.
right? Uh, I would also love to see the presidents of perhaps the three Latin American presidents, Mauricio, Gilberto, and Paquito, scoring a fight. That's something that I would love to experiment at some point. A fight that they will have no interest in. Um, uh, the judging throughout the summer June series. Yeah, I mean, Santillan De Marco, I unofficially judged it. I had 96-94 in favor of Antonio De Marco. I think that any score around there, any score around the range of that, 96-92, 96-94, or even a 96-94 against DeMarco could be okay depending on how that judge scored the round, right? I didn't analyze the score, the official scores, and you gotta also understand that. Look at the new scenarios, or the new normal in this case, at this moment on those fights. No crowd, no crowd, no noise, no public noise, which is a lot. You hear a lot of the coaches or trainers screaming, okay? And basically you could hear just about anything that's around. So I'm wondering if those judges, which by the way are 2 meters away from the ring, okay, they're not next to the ring, they're 2 meters away. That was the rule that they put together. I wonder if they are able to also hear a little bit of the commentary. I don't know. I don't know if the commentary is done in an isolated studio or the commentary is nearby where you can hear it, right?
Right.
You never want to, as a judge, you go in there with an objective mind, and anything around is a factor, and maybe not consciously, but subconsciously you can be affected. I don't talk about judges because they're my colleagues. I go to seminars with them. They're friends of mine, but all I can say is that we sometimes have bad nights.
Yeah.
There's bad nights and bad nights, right? We know we've seen some ridiculous scoring in the past overall. And it is incredible how sometimes a judge can see a total different, a judge on the spot officially can see a total different fight, Um, uh, just I've seen it all. I mean, I've seen scores that are completely ridiculous. But again, I don't criticize. I'm not going to go into that because we all can have a bad night. But I have to say that within the judges population, I encourage everybody to go to seminars. I encourage everybody to go to school. I go to seminars all the time. I mean, I go at least to 2 or 3 seminars a year. And even though I think that I know it all on judging, you always it's always good to go to seminars because you practice with a crowd, and it's always good to refresh. So I encourage all the judges that to go to seminars, regardless, every year seminars.
Yeah, and you bring up a couple of good points about the lack of crowd. I think that actually does play a factor a little bit. I think you bring up another excellent point where a lot of people, who think they know it all in judge, especially those who aren't exactly certified or licensed or have done any seminars whatsoever, think that they know more than the judges.
I hate when you see in social media people saying, "Oh, I had the fight 96, 94, or I had the fight," and they never judged that. They never did go round by round. They sort of like think that they had it at 96, 94, or a 97, or a 116 to 112, without even going through it. And that's not fair because when you're going to talk about scores, and when you're going to talk about a particular unofficial score, you better make sure that you did go round by round,
Right. And me personally, I try to be pretty transparent when it comes to when I score fights and I post whatever is going on social media. I try my best to post every round that I do, if not, every other round at the very least. But even then, and as much as I think that I think my scorecards, right? And I'll be perfectly honest, I don't have the amount of experience that you have. I don't undergo the amount of seminars that you go through. And at the end of the day, me being a media member and just a boxing fan, well, no matter what I put on social media, what my score is or what I think about what other judges think, I'm still, it's still a subjective opinion from someone who hasn't really done it. But it is certainly an interesting way. And by the way, I absolutely love the suggestion that you had about media members and guys like Paco Valcarcelo, Gilberto Mendoza, or Mauricio Suleiman doing an official role. I think that actually be very interesting. Would be afraid for any media member that does it and they completely screw up a scorecard, which
I have suggested, because oftentimes, Carlos, all the time, we get tanked. I mean, never heard anybody talking good about a judge. So I'm I belong to WBC.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a WBC judge, international judge. I'm also a Florida Boxing Commission judge. And in the WBC, I have suggested 2 things, and I hope they are done at some point. One is to invite to seminars members of the media.
I agree. I think that'd be a great idea.
Invite Dan Rafael, invite yourself, invite Steve Kim, invite all of the relevant members of media to seminars, so that they can go through seminars, so that they can better score unofficially, so that they can mingle with the judges, and also so they get to know the judges. I'm probably the only judge who are in social media. I have been criticized by the judging population because I'm in social media and no judges should be in social media. I've always been against that because I come from media, my 24/7 job is media. So I'm not going to be hiring from media, okay? And so I think also the judges or the media members and the people, I wish they knew the judges. They knew the sort of persons they are. They knew they know. I wish they knew the integrity of the judges a little bit better. And for that, I think the judges need to get involved with the public or with the media. You know,
Mhm.
or those names that you talk about, they're ghosts to many
Right.
people. You know, they've never come out and okay, so you had a bad score, Mister Whatever. Why did you have a 10-9 or a 10-8 when it was supposed to be? Talk about it. Defend your position. You know. So I think judges they need to go out in the public a little bit more so that people get to know them a little bit more, so that people get to be more comfortable with them. Uh, and I think that media members should go to seminars and should get to know a little bit more about the scoring and get to know also the judges one on one. You know.
Yeah, I listen. I'm all for more transparency, especially when it comes to this sport, and I think those are all pretty good ideas. And I do think from both sides, I think things can be a little bit better. I think things can always be better, but I
Right.
do agree that transparency is something that should be used a lot more often, especially when it comes to judging. So we're kind of moving on from the judging aspect to what you've been doing on ESPN Deportes and ESPN Knockout is as a broadcaster and as an analyst. One thing that I think a lot of people may not realize is especially when it comes with this summer series with Top Rank, is the difficulty of having to do the shows that you're doing from a remote location, watching the fights, and also interacting with your fellow broadcasters who are also in their separate locations watching the fights. And that's been and I know this from experience because one small thing, it could be whether it be through no fault of anyone, and everything just gets thrown off. So, kind of give me your thoughts and your experience having to do these broadcasts in the setup that we currently have.
Well, COVID has forced us to do a lot of things that we never did before. Look at the remote judging. So same goes for broadcasting. In ESPN, we are right now not permitted to go to the studio, not permitted to be broadcast our shows anywhere close to anybody. So we have to do it remotely. For instance, last night's car, we were two of us in Miami and another member of our team in Mexico City. There are some challenges all the time. I think technology is there. Uh, Technology has been great, and technology has rapidly adjusted to these new circumstances. There's still a little bit of delay, and
Yeah.
that's a little bit of the challenge that we have sometimes because we don't want to be we don't want to interrupt ourselves when we talk.
Mhm.
So there are also techniques to play with that delay that exists. uh and just to show you and show that anybody who will be watching this, I was showing you little before, but this is my house and this is my setting. This is the ESPN knockout setting that goes to close to 70 million homes in
Yeah.
Latin America and throughout the U.S. On ESPN Deportes. So I sit here. This is my local. This is my home studio.
I'm just
Right.
going to say this right now. I am completely jealous of the setup that you have. I wish that I can have a setup as good as this right now. Like I am right now going with as a chair. I'm using a second computer chair to hold up my laptop at a good enough of an angle. So I wish I could have a setup half as good as what you got. But you do bring up another point that I think not a lot of people would think about is the delay sometimes when several of you are talking, and and as you mentioned, the technology has allowed you guys to do these broadcasts from different locations across the U.S. and Mexico, but at the end of the day, you're the ability to have a successful broadcast. A lot of it depends entirely on the technology having a good night or not. So obviously, I think a part of the success that you guys have is the chemistry that you guys have on air, because you put 3-4 guys who've never done a broadcast together and the setup that you guys have, and I think you guys would be far more prone to do more mistakes because there's no chemistry, there's no experience between between new people. But you guys, for the most part, have done an excellent job with having to overcome that stuff. And on the English side, even though guys, the Timothy Bradley and Andre Ward, even though they sometimes have their little hiccups, but I think that's more because of the technology. I think that's more of the technology's fault more than their own. So I think you guys, and I think ESPN has started to do a lot better with these broadcasts. It's certainly that first show. I do have to admit, it was I really came into that first show back.
The first show was, which one was that? That was
the Shakur Stevenson one.
Oh.
The Shakur Stevenson one. I was coming into that show with not really no expectations, but really curious to see how you guys were all gonna have it all set up. And I think you guys have done a pretty solid job from that point and to this point today. Is there anything that I think you guys feel like could be further enhanced when it comes to this summer series? Because I think it's been a learning experience for everyone, really.
Yeah, no, I think that you hammer it. We've been working together for a long time. Like, for instance, the main the anchor in our show in Spanish, Renato. I've done radio with him for the last 10 years. So there's really good chemistry there, and also with Chava Rodriguez and Juan Manuel Marquez and Andres Bermudez. We one of the instructions that I always give to my team is that let's be real, the way it is. Let's be different. Let's talk about let's not concentrate on cheering our ESPN side or our top rank side. Everybody is game in boxing. Talk about all other fighters from from promoters that are not close to ESPN per se in the States. PBC and Mushroom. I have to say that in ESPN Knockout, we do business with all of them. Mm-hmm. We have a strong business with PBC, we have a strong business with Mushroom, and we have a strong business with Top Rank. So, and one of the things that we've been wanting to one of the objectives is to bring the best fights from all over the planet. Okay, so that the crowd learns a little bit more about boxing internationally, not just the big cards. We have a big responsibility in promoting and educating the crowds a little bit. But we also broadcast a lot of local events in Latin America. We've done events in Colombia, in Panama, in Nicaragua, in Mexico, and we always look forward to those local cards because one of the objectives is to support our local boxing in Latin America. And I think that the audience appreciates when you talk real, when you point what's incorrect on the spot. And sometimes, there are journalists that are a little bit afraid of talking and calling it the way it is, unbiased. We try to get away from that. And I think that we are daring when we need to be daring, and we try to call it the way it is. And I think it's been a successful ride. We launched in Latin America last April. So we've been on the air for a little bit more than a year strong. And now some of our fights or events are broadcast through ESPN Deportes. That's why you've been able to see some of our shows. But in Latin America, we've been live for the last year and 2 months. That's the other objective, live boxing. So live boxing from all the corners of the planet. We've done boxing cards from Kazakhstan, from Germany, from the UK, from France, from Philippines, from Japan, from everywhere. So we're really happy about that, and I think the crowds are reacting. And Latin America is just a huge territory when it comes to boxing. Not only Mexico, but Argentina is huge. But then you have Colombia is the third largest country when it comes down to boxing. And then you have Panama, Nicaragua, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico. It's a big boxing crowd. So we're very happy with ESPN account. We are trying to bring the best boxing to the Latin American audience, and we're doing it in the right way.
One thing that you mentioned, obviously, with all the relationships and with broadcasting shows from all over the world, you mentioned Nicaragua, and actually, that's one thing I wanted to ask about that, because the first, I guess you could call it, I guess it was the first boxing card since the pandemic.
Very first one.
Was the one in Nicaragua, headlined by Romy Zamora and Ramiro Blanco. And I remember that one, and I thought the way it was set up with the venue, with the referees wearing the face masks and everybody being separated by 6 feet. So, yeah, the crowd was practicing social distancing. I looked at that and I kind of thought to myself, the way it's been set up, and I know Nicaragua, especially at the time, was a country that was pretty much unaffected by COVID-19, completely. But in the U.S., obviously, it's a far, far different situation. But I looked at that and I thought to myself, if promoters and the commissions are able to do this well, I think that you can take the model that was done in that show in Nicaragua and implement that for when it's safe for crowds to return. And I thought, and I've always believed that if you want to do the empty arena shows, fine, that's great. But if you want to allow fans back in, I think the model from that card in Nicaragua, I think that's the way you kind of want to ease things in. And I'm kind of curious what your thoughts were when that whole thing, when that event was happening, when all the protocols that was being done in place, and can that type of setup work in the United States?
I'm happy to know that you remember that the very first live card was the Nicaraguan card, and everybody was watching, and everybody watched, everybody saw it. I think they did a really amazing job with the protocols, particularly being the first card, and particularly being a card with crowds. They practice social distance. I think everybody took note. We haven't had so far a live event with crowds yet. Nicaragua has been the only one. I think that Top Rank has done a tremendous job putting up the summer series and the July series, and the fact that there's been quite a few fighters and non-fighters with testing positive for COVID is the result that the system is working. Okay, and so I think it's really great what Top Rank is doing. I think that they work really hard to put those fights together, particularly with extreme tight budgets. Obviously, there are not the big fights that we want to see. I think they're going to come in the second stage. However, there's been really good fights in those cards. I'm looking forward to the cards in July. I think they're going to be quite a few good matches. Even though Baranchik, Sean Cepeda was called off, I think the replacement for Sean Cepeda, I'm just as excited as knowing that Sean Cepeda was going to be fighting Ivan Baranchik. And it's a breaking story here in your podcast. Sean Cepeda is probably going to be fighting Nino Lopez, the Argentine.
Oh, okay.
Tough fight, really good fight. I'm really looking forward to it. Marcelino Lopez is a beast. very different boxing style than Sean Cepeda, but he has a good punch. So I'm really looking forward to that on July 7th. Anyhow, I think that now we're going to be seeing uh, uh, Matchroom and Golden Boy shows for the first time coming up. Uh, Virgil Ortiz is fighting Samuel Vargas. Uh, and we're going to see all the Mushroom promotion shows from Eddie's Garden.
Brady's backyard, which is still crazy.
And I'm looking forward to seeing also the PBC shows, which I think they're going to be in California, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So I think boxing is picking up. I think little by little. I mean, there was a time that we didn't have anything, just almost 2 months without it, and we are blessed to be having watching shows every week now. That I think July, August, September, and October, it's gonna be full of shows. Let me tell you something. At least on the ESPN Knockout side, those Tuesdays and Thursday night fights, they have been great. They've been performing great in Latin America, and I think that the audience is getting accustomed to watching boxing on Tuesday and Thursday nights. Nothing new. You remember the Tuesday night fights and the Thursday night fights in the States. So I think it's a great thing. Fights with crowds in the States or in the UK per se. I don't know. You tell me. I mean, Canelo is going to fight in October. The question is, with a crowd or without a crowd? And if it's with a crowd, it's going to be limited to people in the arena, I believe, or it should be that way. It's going to be. I think the big fights are holding up for whenever we have crowds. One of them that I really want to watch is Berchel versus Oscar Valdez.
A really good fight.
And I think they're holding up because of the crowd. Let's see what happens. There's a big fight coming up on Mushroom Promotions on August 22nd, which is Povetkin versus Dillian White. And I'm interested to see the PBC schedule coming up. We know that Pantera and Eddie is going to be fighting Alameda. I like to know when Errol Spence and Danny Garcia are going to set the date for that pay-per-view. I want to know when Gervonta Davis and Leo Santa Cruz will set their date for another pay-per-view. The good news, Carlos, I think, is that we will have a lot of boxing in the month of July, August, September, and October, and the fall.
Yeah, I mean, we already got plenty of shows. I honestly have lost count how many we've already had this month. I think we are now by 9 or 10 already, and we still got a jam-packed July schedule. The last couple of days, Matchroom announced their schedule with a lot of solid fights right there, and really, you've highlighted pretty much a good portion of the fights that are in there. I think I'm really excited about some of the fights that are on the schedule. I think one fight that I don't think we've mentioned is Alex Saucedo versus Sonny Fredrickson. I think that's going to be. I think that's going to be a fantastic fight. Yeah. Just on the basis of Alex Saucedo just being a tremendous action-packed fighter who his last few fights have not disappointed one bit, to say the least. And one thing that I think it's really, really good about boxing being back is, as you mentioned, the testing has, a lot of people are kind of one-siders, like, well, if people are tested positive, that means, maybe it's too soon. Or on the other hand, you say people are tested positive, that means the system is working. And I think it's still been a kind of a work in progress because we had one fight, the Maurice Hooker, Mikel Lepierre, Jose Pedraza fight, was pushed back because Lepierre's manager tested positive for COVID.
It's going to be on the 2nd of July.
Yeah, and I think that's also going to be a solid fight. I think Pedraza, especially at 140, I think I wouldn't necessarily call him elite, but I think he's the guy that is bringing a lot more physicality to his fights. especially at that weight. But overall, I think that I'm a little on the fence when it comes to, because I've always thought maybe boxing probably was going to come back like in August or something, just based on the numbers and the cases going down, going up, going down, and going up again. But I do think that it hasn't gotten to the point where it's gotten too bad with the fighters. Like, we've had once a week, one or two fights go off, whether it be by COVID or injury. But I do think that maybe, yeah. Or if you're Jarrell Miller, if it's that. But actually, before we kind of get to what I was originally going to say, your quick thoughts on the whole Jarrell Miller situation, because we are recording this a little, basically a day after it was revealed, and the first thing I thought is, this has to be a joke, right? This, like, Mike Coppinger reported, and I literally had to like really carefully read it and read from who it was, thinking this has to be like some sort of a fake account. Like, there's no way Jarrell Miller could possibly test positive, not just fail a drug test, but also fail a drug test for one of the same drugs he failed last year that cost him the Joshua fight, and it just kind of, I'm just astounded that he would pull this out. Obviously, I don't think we've seen the B sample, but we're all assuming the B sample also tests positive, because it's very rare that the B sample turns out negative. But overall, I don't know if you have any thoughts on the whole drama.
The first thing that came to mind when I read it yesterday was, is he competing versus John Jones? I'm like, but yeah, I mean, recurrence is a big thing. I mean, and this is one of the things about boxing, that there's not really one single regulatory body that covers boxing. There's many, right? That's why we've seen a lot of people getting a lot of breaks. One of them is Luis Neri, for instance.
Right.
Okay. For as much as I like Luis Neri and his boxing and everything, he's been a recurrent. Baby Miller, I mean, I wonder what's gonna happen. He's gonna have to face a suspension. Now, what kind of suspension? It should be a severe suspension, because it's been a recurrent. It's been, that happened already a few times, and let's see. I mean, I'm not surprised. Things like that happen all the time. And recently I saw a picture of him that he was in the gym with all these bodybuilders. And I'm like, oh, okay. Now it makes sense.
Where there's smoke, there's fire.
Wishing on the positive, wishing Jarrett, Big Baby Miller, wishing him good. Hopefully he can resolve his situation, and he's got to be smart about it. I mean, he's got to be out of those substances. Boxing, I mean, so only but best wishes, and I don't know. It's unfortunate. I wanted to see him fight.
Yeah, I was curious to see.
I'm hearing that now Forrest is going to be fighting Carlos Takam.
Yeah, that's a good fight. That's a good fight. I think Carlos Takam, first of all, has showed he's a very tough fighter in the Joshua fight. And if you look at some of the fights he's had, I think with Dillian White, the Derek Chisora, but one of those fights was a very good fight.
It was a great fight.
It was a great fight. He's like, when you put him up against guys, heavyweights who like to come forward and attack on the inside, Carlos Takam fights are really, really fun.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he comes to fight, and he's good.
Yeah,
should be a fight on the what was the 9th, July 9th, I believe.
Yeah, I believe that was supposed to be the main event of July 9th, and it's unfortunate that this is still an issue, and really Jarrell's not the only one doing taking banned substances and taking steroids, HGH, whatever you want to call it. It's a problem.
He's not the only one.
He's not
he
the only
just got caught.
Yeah, and it was dumb enough to get caught with the same thing he got caught before.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. But kind of before we end things off here, I do want to give you the floor to talk about the Monzon series that's on Netflix right now. I believe it's a 13 episode series on former world champion Carlos Monzon and the entire mess that surrounded him. It's a fascinating series to watch, and obviously you are, I don't know if it'd be right to call you the brainchild, but you were one of the major people behind the scenes working on this. So I kind of want to give you the floor to talk about the series for anybody that hasn't either heard of it or hasn't had a chance to see it.
Yeah, definitely. I have to say that uh, boxing is my hobby. I spend a lot of time in boxing on my free time, but it's not my job. It's not my 24/7 job. Uh, my 24/7 job for the last 30 years has been television.
Mhm.
So I produce and I commercialize television. I work for the Walt Disney Company, and I'm the head of Disney Media for all the Latin American countries in Latin America and in the U.S. Hispanic market. And one of my other passions in life is production. And so I had production for the Walt Disney Company in Latin America and the U.S. Hispanic market. I've been doing it for the last 25 years with Disney. And it was inevitable that at one point I will have to put two of my passions together: boxing and production, TV production. Um, how many boxing movies are out there throughout history? Many, but never you've never heard of one single really live action series,
Mhm.
boxing live action series. So years back, I I put my very first series together, based on the life of an amazing Mexican champion, which is Julio Cesar Chavez.
Mhm.
And I created and I produced a series based on his life, a live action series based on his life, 26 hours, 26 episodes, entitled El Cesar. If you haven't seen it, watch it. You can get it in Amazon. It's on Amazon right now, and that inspired me to work on the second piece, the second boxing piece, and and Monzon came to life. You know, when I'm putting these productions together, uh, it is a requirement not only that the boxer is well known, but the boxer needs to have some sort of a drama in his life.
Right.
Julio Cesar Chavez certainly had many dramas in his life, and Carlos Monzon had many dramas in his life, and a huge case that is very relevant nowadays. Okay, that case was big back in the 80s, and Carlos Monzon has also been a great champion. Perhaps many consider him one of the best or the best 160 pounder in the history of boxing. Very well loved by all the boxing fans in Argentina, by the masses, but also very well hated
Mhm.
by the masses because of the crime. So uh, there's a commercial formula that I always, when I identify it and I see it, I try to grab it and run with it, uh, which is similar to the Floyd Mayweather formula,
Mhm.
similar to the Saul Canelo Alvarez formula, which is having lots of fans on something and lots of haters. That is the best commercial formula that you can have. And Monzon he has that. Has a lot of fans on the boxing side and a lot of haters on the femicidio side, right? And and that show just became a huge hit in Argentina. I mean, it really paralyzed the country because the new generations who never got to know Carlos Monzon, they always heard about it,
Mhm.
right? But they never knew the details on the big case back in the 80s. And the older generations, they refreshed their minds with the fresh content. It was such success, Carlos, that any given night in Argentina during the week, the newscasters were talking about it.
Oh
All
wow.
the magazine shows on free television were talking about it. It's on Netflix, so anybody who hasn't seen it, watch it. I I produce a lot. I right now I have about over 100 productions underway for the next couple of years
Oh wow.
of all kinds, of all types of category of productions. Um, but there's certainly another boxing series coming down the pipe. I won't talk about who it is because I'm going to make a big announcement at some point. So I love that boxing genre in the production side of the business because uh, boxing is the sport of the poor. Uh, is the sport of the struggling people. Okay, and when you look at boxers, Carlos, everybody has a soap opera.
Hmm.
You know, they come from ground up. They come from very poor nucleus, family nucleus, and they always have drama and they always have a story to tell. So there's a zillion of boxing
Yeah.
stories out there, and I hope that I can continue keep bringing this sort of series to the audience. The next one, for instance, is going to be a great one too. I'm looking forward to it. I'm working on it right now.
Oh wow. I'm certainly looking forward to it. And you also bring up another good point. I mean, look, they say boxing is the theater of the unexpected, and that is especially true inside and outside of the ring. And again, for those of you who have not seen it, it's Monzon on Netflix. It's a 13-part series. Really, it's a very, very fascinating and very interesting series to watch. I highly recommend any boxing fan to go out of their way and watch it. And it's, yeah, it's certainly very interesting. There's a million stories, as you said. There's a million stories you can tell. Like there's enough fighters.
Mike Tyson's movie is going to be amazing.
Yeah, yeah, the one with Jamie Foxx, who, by the way,
Yep.
looks in unbelievable shape.
Unbelievable.
An
Yeah.
unbelievable shape. And yeah, as you mentioned, million stories. There's enough stories from the past and in the future that you can do a ton of productions on throughout the rest of time. And again, there's very interesting way to present it because you mentioned there's a lot of boxing movies, there's a lot of like documentaries, but there's not a lot of productions regarding boxing that's formatted in the style that you have it, which is
Right.
which is interesting. I think it's one that I think is very much appreciated, especially those who are binge watching everything on Netflix right now.
I know. Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, Fernando, thank you so much for coming on here. I really do appreciate it. I love talking boxing with you, not just here, but on social media as well. Where can people find you on Twitter?
Well, I only do social media. I only have Twitter, and you can find me at Barbosa Box. Um, I'm pretty active, as you know. I like to interact with most people there, and I find it very interesting. And for those of you who are fans of boxing, uh, know that the scene is in Twitter. Boxing Twitter is where everybody gets the latest, the breaking news, and just about mostly everything. So I'm pretty satisfied with being part of that group of people in Twitter. I really appreciate it, and I really enjoy it, sharing and reading everybody and the fans and the haters and everybody. It's great.
Well, man, well, Fernando, again, thank you so much. Best of luck on the upcoming productions and projects you got going on
Thank you,
the
Carlos.
upcoming ESPN boxing cards and the and everything you got going on ESPN Knockout. Best of luck there. Again, Fernando Barbosa at Barbosa Box. You can find them on Twitter there. Thank you so much, Fernando, and I hope you have a
Carlos.
great
Good luck to you.
great Sunday.
Good luck to you. Good luck to your podcast. Good luck to everything you're doing. You do a fine job, and we need more of you in boxing. I appreciate it. I love reading everything that you put together. Very nice.
Thank you, Fernando. It means a lot, especially someone with the notoriety that you have and the years of experience. That really means a lot. Really appreciate you coming on here, and again, thanks so much.
Thank you, Carlos.